Yay! I remember, I think it was just last week maybe, I was talking to Daniel about Nolan. He's like 2, he's going to be 3 soon. I haven't seen any evidence of terrible twos there. I don't know what's going on at home, but has anybody seen terrible twos there? Oh, some family members have. There's something that there are adjustments that have to be made as we grow up. There are attitude adjustments, worldview adjustments. And I have a theory about terrible twos, or maybe has something to do with it. And that is, when a baby's born, the entire world revolves around that baby. Everybody's at that baby's beck and call, right? I mean, we're all just serving the baby, whatever it is. How often do you say no to a baby, right? No is just not a common thing for a baby. And as they get older, they don't hear no a lot. I think the no's start to come in when they become sort of mobile. Because before they're mobile, they're just kind of lump and you're doing everything, and there's not a lot of reason to say no. Maybe if they're throwing their food off the plate, I don't know if they're going to listen to you anyway, but generally it's when they can stick something metal into the light socket or something. You got to start saying no, right? And they don't know what happened. They had control of the world. They were, basically God, and now all of a sudden their servants are rebelling. And I think that can be maddening, Anybody get me here? You know what I'm saying? So I think that may contribute to the attitude of the terrible twos. Like, I was in charge here, and I've lost it. And then there's another adjustment, hopefully that happens. Because I think we grow up and we have sort of this idea that like this whole thing is my story. It's like the Truman Show. Anybody ever see that? The Truman Show, where the entire thing is some big bubble all built around the one guy. I forget his name now. Jim Carrey. Yeah, I love Jim Carrey. Anyway, it's all built around him, right? I think we feel that way for a long time as we're growing up, that this whole thing's my story. Everything else is just in my story. All y'all, you're just placeholders of people in my story. That's the place you hold. And the guy at work is the guy at my work and my story. And the guy at the market is just my story. I remember driving on the freeways when I was young. And, LA freeways like 16 lanes across, if you're in some places with both sides. But you're driving along and there's all these people, right? You're stop and go traffic. There's a billion people around you. And thinking, like there's a guy in that car right there. He's going to make a turn up here somewhere or get off the freeway and never even know he was in my story. But it's my story. And there's somewhere as you grow up, you start to realize every one of those people in all those cars, in their world, it's their story. They have their own story. I was just a guy in a car that they'll never see again in their story. And that's a tough pill to swallow as we grow up. Can I get an amen? Some people never get there. Some people never realize, this? Anybody ever encounter someone who just doesn't realize that each and every individual, they have their own story? And you just occupy a small place in their story. So that's another adjustment. That's a growing up adjustment. Well, there's another adjustment that has to be made. And I think Job shows us this adjustment. I think Jesus knew this. I think Jesus' closest friends, who were his apostles and disciples, who would lay down their lives for the gospel, I think they knew it. And I think those in the early centuries, and I've always thought about them, I've thought about how they laid down their life. They went through suffering. They were willing to even see their families suffer for the sake of the gospel. But I think it's because they knew something that I think maybe most people don't know. And I think we see it in Job. So hopefully we'll get there by the end of what we're going to read today. We're going to we're going to see this next jump, this next adjustment, worldview shift, paradigm shift that has to happen if we're truly going to live at peace with God and all the stuff that happens in this life. It's interesting. Last week, I know I told you, I said the book of Job is a lot of people think the book of Job is answering the question, why do bad things happen to good people? I have written in my own Bible right here at the top in pencil, and I just noticed it this morning because I've been preaching from a tablet for a long time. But I noticed right here it says, at the top of the chapter 1 of Job, it says, the problem, why bad things happen to good people. But it's not. Now I'm saying it's not. It's not the problem. Because it'll never answer that question. It is a problem. It is about a guy who's really good, who bad things are happening to. That's true. But this book is never going to answer that question, especially to Job. Job is never going to be told how it all began, why those things happen. He's never going to know any of that. He's going to have to learn something and then find peace with God. And it won't be, here's the answer to your question. This is true. But there is a real question being asked here that we all have to wrestle with. And that's when the Satan, the Hasatan, the accuser, the adversary, the prosecutor, when that being says, does Job serve God for nothing? And the heart of the question is God worthy of being revered, honored, feared? But the way it's used here is like the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. It's acknowledging and being in awe of God. It's that, which would include like wanting to know Him and listening to Him and obeying Him and all of that, of course. But it's an awe and respect, a reverence for God. I think if we just see God truly, I don't think it's that big of a question. I think it's obvious that the answer would be yes. Yes, we would still revere God, even if we didn't get anything from it. Even if it wasn't like, okay, God, now give me a bunch of property and children and money and fame. And without any of that, I think really the basic question is easy to answer. That yes, of course we would, if we truly see Him. The God whom it says the heavens declare the glory of God, and the earth and all that is in it is the work of His hands. Day after day they stream forth knowledge, and night after night they give speech, or something like that. It's from Psalm 119, I think. But anyway, that if we truly see, if we see the stars in the sky and those make us awe, if we look at DNA strand and they make us awe, all the stuff, of course, we revere far less. We revere things for far less. We stand in awe of things for far less, don't we? I remember years ago, my family, we loved to watch AGT. You know what that is? America's Got Talent. We love that. One of my favorite seasons was the season where, she was either 8 or 10 years old. Jackie Evancho. Anybody remember that name? That little girl, she came on the stage and she sang like an angel. I was blown away. I'm just like, I saw God present, I just couldn't believe it. I was just blown away. I'm like, and even like Howie Mandel and the others, like, is that really coming out of is that you? Is this a prank? Because you just couldn't believe she was singing in these other languages, these amazing, beautiful things. Anybody remember her? Some of you? I was mesmerized by her. I just loved it so much because it gave me a connection with real talent and beauty, and loved it so much when they went on tour like they do after those shows. They go on tour with these shows. We went, I think it's to the Honda Center in LA. We went just for Jackie Evancho. Now they had everybody there, but it just was so amazing to me. I was in awe just of that talent, right? Now it may not be Jackie Evancho for you, but maybe Morgan Wallen, right? Some of you like that, or Taylor Swift. Okay, I always loved Elton John. when I was a kid, and I grew up loving Elton John. I'm just amazed by his talent, and I just love it. I love it. And then Mackenzie, and I should say in Tabitha, it was her idea, but Mackenzie paid for it, got us tickets to go, and Mackenzie and I went, and we were sitting. I mean, Elton John at one point was as close as Dennis is right there, and then when the stage moved, he was maybe as far away as maybe the back where Tim is, but I was in awe. I mean, I love his entertainment. I'm like, wow. So I'm saying, you have your things, right? There are things that really make you go, wow. Surely if we can be wow about these things, surely if we truly saw the God, understood the God who created all this, right, that we would just be in awe. And we wouldn't have to get anything to experience that awe. So I think the answer is yes, but we still got to answer. We still got to deal with it, because it is so common in religion for people to, well, what do I get out of it? And I've heard it as a minister for maybe 4 decades. I've heard it from people. I remember a young person in my youth group, he didn't want to trade away his youthful, wiles, He'll wait till he's older because what do I get out of it, right? So he just doesn't understand, Anyway, I don't want to go into all that. I'm just saying God is worthy to be revered if we just see him and know him as the God of the creation. Okay, so coming into the story, we talked about Job, and the Bible says about Job, he was blameless, he was upright, he feared God, and he kept himself from evil. All those words are just telling us Job was a really good guy, best guy you ever knew, the best neighbor you ever had, best co-worker you ever had, best family member or extended family member you ever had. He's just a great guy. It's not trying to say Job was perfect, like another Jesus kind of thing. Okay? And I did want to say something about this, because the word blameless, it's been misunderstood, and it's an important word in the churches. Because, anybody know when blameless comes up in churches? Anybody? What are the qualifications of an elder? If you look them up, must be blameless. What does that mean? Sinless? Okay, all you others, I've just officially disqualified you. You're no longer elders. If blameless means sinless. It's silly, but somehow churches roll this idea of blameless. It's an evaluation of your marriage and divorce status. That's all. It doesn't say that. The Bible doesn't say that. It doesn't say blameless means that. Blameless doesn't mean you're perfect, and it doesn't mean that. What does blameless mean? Well, we can learn what it means from the Bible. Let me tell you somebody who was blameless, you may never guess was blameless. King David. Could King David be an elder in your church? Probably not. He wouldn't fit all the qualifications, and we would say he's not blameless. But the Bible says he's blameless. Several times, 4 times. In Psalm, I think it's Psalm 18 and also 2 Samuel 22, David has written the Psalms about he lived blameless before God. And in fact, he also says God made him blameless. In Romans chapter 4, Paul looks back and says, David understood, and David understood this, and he says, blessed is the man whose sins are forgiven, whose sins the Lord will never count against him. Blamelessness has to do with being forgiven, not having sin, but walking in honesty about sin. And when there's sin, you acknowledge and you get forgiven, and you live in the forgiveness. That's blameless. So if it ever comes up, and maybe it's not come up in this church, but if it ever comes up and people are talking about blameless, make sure you look at David. He was blameless. And so this is not talking about what Job was somehow perfect. It's just, all these words are saying, you need to know Job, he's as good as they come. He's a really good dude. And then, before we read in verse 13, just know Job, he was just having a normal day. Job, he got up, his kids got together, had, a backyard barbecue with noodle salad and all that stuff, whatever. They were eating and drinking and enjoying life. And so the next day Job gets up and he goes and he makes intercession for them and he makes sacrifices. He prays for them in case anybody was doing anything wrong. And it says Job did this continually. So this is how he lived his life. He lived his life in this connection with God where he prayed for his kids and he made intercession. And I'm sure he would do it for himself if he felt like he had to. And this is how he lived his life, and he did it that day. This is his normal way of life. And the thing about it is, he's about to get hit with calamity that did not make an appointment. Can you relate to that? Does calamity make an appointment? Does it say, hey, I'm just calling you up to let you know tomorrow at 3 p.m. It's all going to come down on you? It doesn't make an appointment. It's just, you're going about your normal day. You're doing your normal stuff. You get up, maybe you make some coffee, maybe you go through the mail, get ready for work or get your kids off to school, run the errands, maybe shopping, maybe doctor's appointment. You have no idea that there's going to be a phone call from the school saying there was an incident. Do you? You have no idea that something happened and the company you work for is struggling and maybe closing. You didn't know that. You didn't know the doctor was going to call and say, hey, about that last visit, I got some news. These things, they come without appointment and they knock us down. And this is what happens to Job. And so I want to read in verse 13. And it says, one day when Job's sons and daughters were fasting and drinking wine at the oldest brother's house, a messenger came to Job and said, the oxen were plowing and the donkeys were grazing nearby, and the Sabaeans attacked and carried them off. They put the servants to the sword, and I am the only one who's escaped to tell you. While he was still speaking, another messenger came and said, the fire of God fell from the sky and burned up the sheep and the servants, and I am the only one who has escaped to tell you. While he was still speaking, another messenger came and said, the Chaldeans formed 3 raiding parties and swept down on your camels and carried them off. They put the servants to the sword, and I am the only one who's escaped to tell you. While he was still speaking, yet another messenger came and said, your sons and daughters were feasting and drinking wine at the oldest brother's house when suddenly a mighty wind swept in from the desert and struck the 4 corners of the house. It collapsed on them, and they are dead. And I am the only one who's escaped to tell you. Everything, all at once. Well, how's that go? I tried to watch that movie. I don't know what it's about. I couldn't watch it. It didn't make sense to me. But what it says is everything, everywhere, and all at once. That's what happened to Job. Right? Just think, if each report took 30 seconds to give, and therefore they're all there within 2 minutes, all this basically happened at once. Hold on to that for a second. This is another place I struggle with. I struggle with, and I told you this last week, it reads okay to me when I'm reading as a parable. There was a man in the land of Uz. There was an old woman who lived in a shoe, right? There was a man who had 2 sons, and one of them said, Dad, give me all my stuff, right? There was a woman who swallowed a fly, right? It works fine. It works perfectly like that. But if I'm taking this literal and historical, it's challenging for me. I just want you to know that. This Hasatan, this prosecutor, this accuser, this is not a deity. We are not from a Greek or Roman idea of pantheons of gods, are we? You believe in all these gods? How many of us are monotheistic here where we believe in one God, and then it's kind of a mystery how he has come to make himself known to us through Jesus and the power of the Spirit and all of that. Yeah, there's a lot of mystery there, but I'm a monotheist. I believe in one God, and I don't believe these other things are gods. I don't believe they have the power of a God. You hear what I'm saying? So my idea of this character, Hasatan does not have the power to just rain fire of God down from heaven. Hasatan doesn't have the power to gather forth the four winds from the corners of the earth and bring them down on the house and bury those kids. Doesn't have that power. Now, I know some scholars will argue, well, God has given him permission. God has allowed him to do this. Okay, but you can give me all the permission you want. I'm never going to slam dunk a basketball. When I was thinner, I could jump pretty high for a guy my height. But I can't. I can't put a basketball over a 10-foot rim. Right? I'm never going to be able to leap over a tall building in a single bound. You can give me permission all you want. In fact, you can give me permission to come play this piano and play some beautiful Mozart. Give me all the permission you want. I can't play the thing. I took piano lessons. I can't do it. These fingers won't do it, and there's like arthritis. It hurts. I can't do it. Permission or not. You understand what I'm saying? I don't have that power. Permission doesn't change that. So I wrestle with how is God involved here? It's his power that rains fire from the sky. It's his power that brings the four winds. And this is where we get back to whose story it is. When you're just talking about those were Job's servants, those were Job's children, they're just placeholders. But start giving them names. All those servants and all those children. It was Amanda, it was Mackenzie, it was Tabitha. Start giving all those servants names, where each one of them has a family, and a mom and a dad and kids. Start giving them names. And then consider that is it really God's nature to destroy all of these individuals who have their own worlds and their own story? Just to destroy them so a point can be made about the fact that Job will serve God even if he lost everything? Look, I may be wrong. I don't think God's mad at me. I feel like I'm defending his nature and character. So I don't mind. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But for me, this works as a wisdom story. It works as a parable, and all of these things can happen. You can have a dad who's going to say to a kid, yeah, I worked all my life to give you this, but yeah, if you want to go waste it on, riotous living and sin, yeah, here's the money, go ahead and do it. That works for me in a story that's teaching a message. It just doesn't ring true in reality. So that's where I'm at. I just wanted to explain it to you because Job's a tough book. There's some tough things to wrestle with here. And so what's going on with this Hasatan character and killing of the children and everything, I struggle with that. So for me, it's a parable. That's maybe I'm 30-70 on that. 70, I think it's a parable. But if it's just a true historic story, okay. There are people who cite Job as a character, but like I said, you can cite Romeo and Juliet, and it doesn't mean it's a true story. It just means everybody knows what you're talking about. All right, so I just want to get that out. So all of these things happen. And he suffers this tremendous loss. And it's so much. It's just so much. And I think, we've suffered loss. Anybody here ever suffer loss? Anybody ever feel that kind of that gut punch? Even the doubled over thing? I felt that. I lost a marriage. My wife didn't want to be married to a preacher, and she left me. We were 6 years married. Information I could have used before she thought it was okay for me to quit my job and go to a preacher school 2 years before. But she left, and I was gut punched for about a year and a half. That really hurt me. I suffered a loss of that relationship. I lost my parents. I've suffered some loss. We lose things. We lose. Maybe we lose financially. Maybe we lose a house. We lose a car. But maybe we lose a loved one. Maybe we lose a parent. Maybe we lose a child. But we know loss. A lot of us know loss, right? I think Job's loss is so complete here for a reason. I think anybody, when they're going through loss, now you don't really compare losses. You can't be like, like that guy we sang that song, It Is Well With My Soul, right there, we just sang it. That guy Horatio Spafford, I think his name. That guy lost, he didn't get on the boat. They were going across the ocean. He didn't get on the boat. But his wife and his 4 daughters did. And something happened on that boat, and the 4 daughters all perished. And then as he was crossing back with his wife, she sent him a message, all is lost, I alone am saved, or something. But when he traveled back across, when he was in that place where his 4 daughters perished, he wrote that song, When Peace Like a River Attends My Way. Is that what we sang? When sorrows like sea billows roll, whatever my lot, thou hast taught me to say, it is well with my soul. Is that amazing that he could write that song? I mean, that's next level stuff, right? But so I suffer a loss, and I suffer grief, but I don't compare it with Horatio, right? I can't imagine his loss, but when I'm going through loss, mine feels like the worst loss ever for anybody, right? And so I think Job's loss is so great because he fits anybody who's ever going to live in the world. When they suffer loss, they're going to be like, man, I'm feeling like Job. You understand? I don't think there's anybody who's like, oh, what Job went through, that's nothing. Let me tell you what I've been through. You see what I'm saying? I think Job fits. Job works. Now, maybe there's somebody who suffered more. I mean, I don't know. They say there's always an exception to the rule. The exception proves the rule. But I think for most people on the planet forever, from the time of Job, they'll be able to go through and say, man, I'm really going through it. I feel like Job. Does that make sense? I think that's important. I think it's important for that purpose, that we can all look to Job. Because when we finish the book of Job, we're going to learn something about the grief that we've gone through and the loss that we've gone through. And hopefully we can learn from Job that next place where we need to be when we think about life and suffering and loss. So he goes through all this loss. And then let's look at his response. At this, Job got up, tore his robe, shaved his head. That's a posture of grief. It's a common posture of grief throughout the Old Testament, throughout that time. Tearing your robes, very common. Shaving your head. There are places where Scripture talks about in your grief there's baldness and other things to have grief. Tearing your robes. Fasting. Do you know fasting is a posture of prayer? Fasting is usually a posture of prayer when there's great grief going on. And so there's this tremendous grief that Job feels. And And I just want to point out something here. There are Christians, there are some Christians who will go around telling you, if you're really a good believer, a true believer, you'll always be happy. Have you ever known anyone like that? Just like, if you're not happy, you're not being a good witness for God. So you have to always be happy. And I would caution that. Job, he's a good guy, and he has a really good relationship with God, it looks like. It looks like he's a stand-up relationship with God kind of guy. But he tears his robes, and he shaves his head, and he grieves, because these are important things. It's a devastating loss. And he does experience the grief. And we need to know that, because it makes his words all the more profound. I mean, what's going through his mind when all this happens? And it says, and then he fell to the ground and worshiped. Now, falling to the ground, he's collapsing in grief. Collapsing in grief. And then it says, and worshiped. And we shouldn't contemporize this and think that while he was falling to the ground, he somehow grabbed his guitar and started playing, Jireh, or How Great Thou Art in worship, right? You get the idea, like, and then they worshiped, and you see their hands up and they're singing the same phrase 15 times because they're worshiping. It's not that. That's it. That's what the word means. The word worship there. That's all it means. Prostrate. Always get those wrong. He's very right. Prostrate. I know the word. Fall down. I got your attention now. Fall down and lay himself out prostrate before God. That's the word. That's all it means. Has nothing to do with singing the songs and waving the hands and all the motions. It's simply being still, body splayed out before God. Just what's going through his mind? God, what did I do? What did I do wrong? I'm sorry. I won't do it again. Just tell me what it is. I didn't mean it. I'm trying my best here. Please stop. What, right? What's going through his mind? My mind would have all these things going on if I got hit with that kind of calamity. But whatever was going on in his mind, we know what he said. And this is quite incredible. And Job said, naked I came from my mother's womb, and naked I will depart. What does that mean? Naked I came from my mother's womb, and naked I'll depart. Somebody described it like, you brought nothing into this world. You can take nothing out. Do we get that? You brought nothing in, you'll take nothing out. While you're here, everything that you have is just on loan. You understand that? That's hard. Listen, that's my tea. This is my Bible. That's my house. That's my car. These are my kids. That's my wife. Right? This is the way we are. This is my stuff. This is my life. Job says, I didn't have anything when I came into this life. I won't take anything out of it with me. So basically, none of it is really mine. It's all on loan. If I loan you my car and you drive it for 5 years, and then you finally are able to get your own, and I say, hey, I want my car back. You've been driving it. You've been taking care of it. Like it's been your car for 5 years. But the truth is, it's never been your car. It's always been my car. I just loaned it to you. And you've been driving it, and that's okay, but now give it back. It's mine, right? And so you give it back. There's a guy, listen, people hate this guy or they love him. I don't care. You hate him, you love him, I don't care. But Rush Limbaugh used to say, with talent on loan from God. And if you hated him, you thought, what an arrogant guy that is. But if you loved him, you thought, that's right. That talent is not his, it's just a loan. Where did it come from? It came from God. I think that about Jackie Evancho. I think her talent came from God. I think that about Elton John. I think that about you, whatever it is that you do really, really well that I'll stand in awe of. I think, wow, that's from God. You see? It's just on loan. This idea that what you have is on loan from God, that's another step. The idea that it's just mine for a time, but I don't really own it, that's a whole nother step. In fact, Job goes on to say, the Lord gave and the Lord took away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Listen, that doesn't fit my story. That doesn't make me the center of the story. I not only have to acknowledge that I have my story and you have your story, that next level is acknowledging this isn't even really my story, it's his story. I'm in his story. And I'm only here for a moment. And whatever I have came from him. And whatever I lose, it was only on loan in the first place. And when I leave, I won't be taking any of it with me. Because it's not my story. I'm in it, but it's not about me. It's about him. Job sees that. Job says that. I'm blown away by that. And this week I started thinking, this is it. This is what Jesus knew. Jesus treated God as the center of the story. And when it finally came to it, he didn't want to be rejected and humiliated. Nobody does. But not as I will, God, as you will. His disciples were beaten. You didn't want to take a beating back then. It wasn't. My dad used to give a good beating. Pretty good beating. But it was nothing like what they experienced, Peter and John, from the religious leaders. Those beatings were like 40 lashes minus one, stuff like that. They left there rejoicing that they'd been counted worthy to suffer for the name. That's a whole different thing. Paul and Silas are in prison, falsely accused, falsely imprisoned, after being beaten, singing praises to God. I think they knew. It's not about them. They're not the center of the story. They're just in God's story. They're in his story, and they're happy to be a part of it. Whatever God chooses. History tells us all the apostles were martyred. They tried to martyr John over and over. He lived to an old age because they couldn't kill him. That's what history says. But all the rest were martyred. And up into the 4th century, Christians were being martyred by the thousands, sometimes in the games, sometimes fed to lions, sometimes dipped in oil and tied to poles and lit on fire to light the gardens. How'd they make that choice? Why didn't they just say, no, I don't know any of that stuff, and then just repent later? I think they knew this. I think they had made that next level jump in immaturity, where they realized not only does everyone have their own story, but truly each one is just part of his story. And when you realize that, as hard as it is, and it's still suffering and it's still grief, you may be able to end up with where Job is right here when he says, God gave it all, and he can take it all away. Still, blessed be the name of the Lord. Tough stuff. But there it is. If God has put something on your heart this morning, we'd love for you to come and talk about that. We'd like to share that with you. You're in your journey to become a Christian, or you're just in a journey to be more faithful, whatever it is. If you need prayer, we have the time. We're going to sing a song, and we'd love for you to respond to whatever God's put on your heart. This is the time to do it while we stand and sing.